Well, thank you for those of you who have joined us for the lunch screening. Some of you actually felt the need to eat, which we understand. So we'll maybe organize that a little better next time. But we're glad you're here, and I am very glad that Spring Hurlbut is here with us. Spring has work in the exhibition that if you haven't had a chance to see it, I highly recommend you all race over to 525B and have a look at her extraordinary video work. It is astonishing, I promise. And then Spring and I kind of put our heads together and thought about putting this screening on because it gave you a little bit of an idea of Spring's work in a larger context and her life with her late partner, Arnaud Maggs. And we just thought that it was a perfect film that suited the Palliative Care Congress because at the time, Arnaud was in a late terminal illness.
That's right. He was my late husband, Arnaud Maggs.
Just a little closer.
My late husband, Arnaud Maggs, he was diagnosed with prostate cancer, and that was, they could guarantee his life expectancy would be 4 years. So what he said to me after that is he said, I'm going to make those 4 years really count. I'm not going to hustle any more curators. I don't have time for that. I am just going to make a wonderful selection of works, and they're going to be very ambitious, and I'm going to put my heart and soul into them, and I feel invigorated. I think this is not what I expected, but I'm going to make it count.
Well, I think it's an example of Arnaud and his ability to face challenges and turn them into positives. And so I think we'll come back at the end of the screening for a Q&A. We'll be screening a short film first with a film by Cahana, who is a Montreal-based director. And it's a beautiful film, a short film that won the Hot Docs Prize for short film this year at the Hot Docs Film Festival. And after that, we will be screening Spring and Arnaud, and then we'll come back for some questions.
Okay, thank you so much, Ella.
You can turn down the lights, please.
Let me dream you into my reality. Longing is an ever-present gnarl that begins inside under the belly button. It begins physically, without imagination, but it wants to climb towards the heart.
Let's see some more pictures. Hurry up, Mommy.
Oh, my boy, I belong to you. I see the skittle under your eyelids. I want to be your sleep.
Alexa, es-tu à la bonne place? Ok. Encore? Ok.
I've lived 9 years in my bed.
Good morning, bye-bye.
My needs are endless since the stroke. All the things that are simple are beyond me. But there's a holy way of asking for help. And that's what I'm learning, to say, I need you. I need your hands. I need your reach. I need you to come. Holiness happens when the body feels loved. You perfect the art of love by knowing where your soul is intended to be. I spend my time in Karen's love. I'm a new breath. The world is turning around us because we have found our center point. I'm lost when I realize I'm here and not in Karen's arms.
Love you so
We'll keep you
much.
posted.
Marcia.
Keep you posted.
Okay.
Hello?
Now the world is living in lockdown
No, there's no audio. Do you hear us?
distance. Suffer.
Maybe I'll call you back in a bit, Arnaud. Bye.
COVID lurks invisibly. I see my body withered, and I know I am susceptible to death. I wait and weaken. My bones protrude through my skin. I don't want to die. I want to live deeply. So I travel through my imagination. I remember myself unobstructed,
I introduce myself. 6 years old, 6 years old.
unchastened. Time is my breath upwards, my gravity up.
Can you see?
I'm standing on an office, calling in the wind that I lie home.
Hey, like your
I travel,
That's your baby in there.
my soul's reflection, my triumph is waiting for me. Such is the love perfected.
We'll dance for you and everything. We had the time of it. We're going to make you have fun, Rabbi.
Longing is always future. You can smile at the past,
It's frozen.
but longing
It's frozen.
is for the memory you don't have yet.
Family and the one that's coming. Get another drink. I love you. Ready?
So I talk to my body. Hurry home, arise, walk out the door. Over so much love, I said to each body, wake up, come out of your slumber. The world is waiting for you to dance again.
Future. Sheasa nisi lavotenu Payami
When I met Arnaud, I realized that he was much older than I was, and I remember actually staring at a picture of Arnaud's father. He was around 85 in that photograph, as far as I can recall. And I remember staring at that photograph because it was early on in my relationship with Arnaud. And I thought, well, this would become the person that I would see in front of me. I had this knowledge that Arnaud would die before I would die, and I began mourning the loss of Arnaud before he died. I recall one instance in my very young life where I woke up and I was very concerned that I didn't know how to take my next breath. And I woke up my parents and I said, what if I forget to breathe while I'm sleeping? I think that that was maybe the first moment where I thought living was highly precarious business.
I guess it was 1973 or so. I was 47 years old, and I decided I wanted to be an artist. I had never, ever given it a thought. Never played with the idea of being an artist. And I suddenly thought, I'm going to be an artist. So what that did was it released me. From that moment, I was imbued with energy, and I knew it was going to work. I sold my house, sold most of the stuff I had. There was a tiny little coach house in the end of the garden, which I kept and made it into a studio. And I had a lot of paper. I'd sold everything, but I had a lot of paper. I kept pictures and things, and I started cutting them up and putting them into scrapbooks.
We'll turn the page. Oh, look at that.
I guess at the same time I was going to drawing classes, and I suddenly saw the model's head in a different way, sort of sculpturally, and I saw a side view of her head, and I thought if I drew a complete circle, the back of her head would form the part of the circle, and her nose would just touch, and her chin would touch. And I suddenly became aware of volume, and that's where I started. I have several favorite pieces. Very often it's the last piece I did But I think the first piece I did could possibly be my favorite, and that was 64 portrait studies. I wanted to show what I was seeing, because I knew I couldn't do it drawing, because people wouldn't believe it, and I thought photography has an authority to it, and that somehow made it real. It just came out of a need to show this thing. And I wanted to show the Bertillon method of front and side, which he developed in the mid-19th century for the Paris police.
When I first saw Arnaud's work, I realized that there was a kind of systematic regiment there that was very, very austere and very tough. And I felt that maybe Arnaud himself was impersonal and maybe very unyielding personality, and I thought, I really never want to meet this guy.
Well, you kind of thought I was a monster, didn't you?
I thought that potentially you could be.
Yeah.
Sometimes I thought of your work as a bit austere and a bit clinical, but in fact, the whole truth is that I think that my work is quite minimal and fairly austere itself.
I think Spring's process is different from my own. She's interested in mortality and immortality. Her ideas come to her slowly, but they come in a very strong manner, because they sort of accumulate, and then she begins producing.
Well, I was the kind of kid who liked the mummies in the natural history museums. I was fascinated by the evidence of what remained after death. It's about our inevitability, isn't it, you know? I'd like to take you back to the ROM, the Royal Ontario Museum. I was invited to make a project there, and I decided that I would visit every department in the ROM and look at the artifacts and specimens. But I walked around and visited the department for half a year, not knowing what I would do. And I was in ornithology, and it was one of the last departments I visited. And there was the ornithologist, Mark Peck, was there, and he was showing me all these beautiful, elaborate birds, and very gorgeous, and really almost too rich for consumption. And finally, on my way out, he said, "Spring, perhaps you'd be interested in this."
And the robin.
Looking forward to this.
Here it is.
Oh my goodness. There it is. Wow.
So there's your bird.
There it is. It's so beautiful.
August 1st, 1943. Wellington, Prince Edward County, Ontario.
I walked out into the hall after looking at that albino robin, and I knew I had an entire exhibition. I knew at that point that everything in my exhibition would be white or transparent, or it would be albino, but this was the start. This was the very beginning, and that's how everything evolved, grew, and became the final sleep. Was this bird. Normally, we identify with the ornamented color of something, but as soon as you rob the specimen of its identifying colors, you're just left with the form. The reason for doing that was to create an equivalence between all of the various objects. I really wanted a 3,000-year-old cat mummy to equal a bottle that was for preserving the dead, to equal a pair of shoes, from textiles to having the swans in their magnificence be just as relevant as every other artifact in the whole exhibition. Everything had value. I called it the final sleep because for me, I was creating one enormous mausoleum and it was definitely a museum within a museum.
I'm very much in awe of the work that she's done and she's doing. And when she begins, I wonder where it's going to go. And I think, I hope it's going to go somewhere, because I can't see where it's going to go, but she does. She sees where it's going to go. It's wonderful. She blows my mind.
I know. Yes. I know.
Well, we met in the 60s, 1986.
Yes, we may have met.
We met.
Technically, yes.
Well, technically, yeah. She came to my, you came to my birthday party.
Yes.
Uninvited.
That's what.
Someone brought you.
That's
you
right.
weren't invited.
No.
I didn't even know about you.
No.
But I took note very quickly.
Did you?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I checked you out.
Did you?
Yeah.
Oh, no. Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
You made the grade.
Did I?
Oh, yeah.
Oh. Well, I didn't realize that I had made the grade at your birthday party.
Oh, yeah. Well, I thought you were kind of cute.
I see.
I mean, I wasn't hitting on you or anything like that.
No.
But I thought you were kind of cute.
Yeah. Oh, dear.
I'm making these arrangements. I collect things that kind of look alike, but they're not quite the same. And sometimes I see something and I look at it. Maybe it's in a flea market. And it's interesting. Then I see another one that is a variation on that. And that interests me, because then you start getting a little series of things. For now, look at that color. It's that, kind of orangey. Or you can always do this too. Voilà, c'est ça. C'est tout. C'est fini. There you go. That's it. I think my art practice determines my decisions every day. Yeah, that looks good. Just caught the sun. It's got that morning sun coming up. The two things, my art practice and my life, are indivisible. I'm interested in ideas, and I'm very interested in collections of things. I think it's my way of showing people the differences in similar things. At first you think they're all the same, and then you realize that everything is a little different. I was in Paris in 1991, and I was trailing around with Spring, and then I happened to notice the hotel signs. And it just like, whoa. It was like a thunderbolt, and I realized what I had there. And I had never seen it before, and I just went at it, because I knew it would work. And I photographed, I think, 300 hotel signs in Paris. I had this unlimited energy, and I continued until I did the whole piece. That's a good one.
Which one?
This one is good. And these are, that's good. I like the arrows pointing. Yeah. Well, I'm doing this show, the National Gallery, doing a show there. It'll be a big show. I wasn't asked, I asked. I pestered them. You can't wait to be asked. You have to ask yourself. "100 consecutive photographs, Joseph Beuys with grid, based on Carl Andre's steel piece." I guess I did this in Düsseldorf in 1980, and I was trying to figure out how I might do this thing with Joseph Beuys. I was in New York, and anyway, I saw the Joseph Beuys show at the Guggenheim, and I was so knocked out by it. I said, I have to photograph this man. And I went to his house and rang his doorbell, and he answered the door, and I did my best. You know, this is your life, you know. I did my, and he said he's too busy. So I didn't miss a beat. I said, well, isn't that just the case? I said, I've got all the time in the world. And he sort of was taken aback a bit. And he said, well, in that case, why don't you come by next Wednesday at 10 a.m.? And that was it. I wasn't there much longer than 2 hours. I did 100 frontals where he was looking at the camera, and then did 100 profiles. I remember he made me some hot chocolate. I think when I do pictures of a person, I'm getting little moments. I think of that person. They've left a trace, haven't they? They left a trace. One day, someone came to my studio, and he had these aerial photographs of this tiny village in France. And the last house on the sort of the peak, because the land dropped down dramatically down to a river down below. And he pointed to this little house, and he said, could you make copies of this photograph, because I want to sell the building. And I looked at it, and I immediately saw the possibilities of this, the location. And I said, well, what shape is it? And he said, it's a complete ruin. And so I said, how much do you want? And he told me. And I said, okay, I'll buy it. And I bought it. And I went over that summer, and it was pouring rain and this very bad road. And we got to the house, and there it was, and there were no doors, no windows. The roof had fallen in, no floors, and there was a dead dog in the basement. And it's kind of scary. And I think that's one of the things that attracted me to it, because it was a bit of a challenge, I thought. Right around the time of that spring, I had put in a bathroom, which she liked very much. So from then on, we started coming over here together. I think my heart is here. Yeah, I've lived here more than any place I've ever lived in my life, really. It's played a role in what we've done in our work. A lot of our work has come out of France, a lot of it. One exceptional piece, I was able to photograph Eugène Ager, the Paris photographer, his little notebook. It's called Repertoire. And I showed every page of this book. I guess all these people were his clients.
Yes.
And would-be clients. And he'd make, well, look, he makes lists sometimes, but the interesting thing is a lot of them have been crossed out. X's, see? And nobody seems to know why. Nobody seems to know why. But it shows the kind of workaday habits of this man. We don't think about that, but he was a hard-working photographer, just trying to keep solvent.
This part of the bed is called a cul-de-scene, and a cul-de-scene is the gooseneck. The neck of a goose. It's my dyslexia. So it's the neck of a goose. It's the neck of a goose. And what the story goes, that when you wed, in your apartment or your house, already when you came home, there was a barcelonette in the house. And you would put your wedding veil over the cul-de-scene in the ready. So this tradition was one of the stories that I've heard when I was collecting the barcelonettes. The idea for Le Jardin du Sommeil came, strangely enough, from a postcard. In the postcard was a cemetery, and I could see in the foreground that one of the cemetery enclosures was actually a child's crib. And then I thought, well, if you multiplied that single bed and you collected a great deal of them, you could make your own rows and create your own kind of homage to the deceased. Curiously enough, when you started putting all the metal beds in rows, they looked very skeletal, and then they literally took on the look of a grave enclosure. I've never had a child, and so
it's all the more remarkable to me to have the evidence of infants and something that I've never really experienced in any kind of comprehensive way. I'm very compelled by the two extremes. How life comes into the world, and then I'm very compelled by how we exit the world. And I think that I'm just swinging in between those two extremes.
Okay, here we go. Off you go. Spring and I go to a lot of flea markets, which are known as vide-greniers, which is almost like a garage sale, but there'll be hundreds of people in a village with everything out on the ground. Every weekend there's one or two of these in nearby villages, and sometimes we would find things that were good for our work. I think the piece Travail des Enfants, all the little tags referring to the child labor in the early part of the century, we found in a flea market here. And we didn't know what they were at first, but then along with them we found all these little livrets or little passbooks for children that they would leave with the employer. All we know about these children is what we see here in these tags. That's their traces.
Well, the hunt is really very exciting because we have a lot of anticipation. We hunt for very different things, Arnaud and I. I'm hunting for things that deal with mortality, commemoration, or the history of childhood. So I have my own, area. Vendu means sold, so the baby has already been purchased.
And these ones are à vendre, for sale.
This is for sale.
Yeah.
And Arnaud has his own area, and he deals largely with systems of identification. So he likes similar things that have a slightly different appearance and so on. And then we find things for each other. So we're often at a fair going, over here, Arnaud, over here, and then he'll be saying, over here, Spring. So we'd be running from one person to the other because each of us have discovered something the other might be potentially interested in.
€5.
Il manque le...
Ouais, c'était un truc, oui. C'était quelque chose pour la cuisine. La cuisine.
Yeah, 12 euros.
Yes.
Okay, good.
3 euros.
Merci. Nice music.
Nice music, merci. Thank you. Valse triste. Valse triste. Comment on dit triste?
Sad.
Triste. Sad, yes. Sad waltz.
Puis-je prendre une photo de votre oreille, s'il vous plaît?
Mon oreille?
Oui?
Oui.
OK.
L'oreille droite? En
Oui,
plus,
oui.
droite?
Ouais.
Allez-y, monsieur. Comme ça, non? Comme ça. Comme ça.
La lumière.
Comme ça.
Voilà. C'est bon. OK. C'est face that way.
Fais ça.
Comme ça. Très bien. Et droite?
Droite.
Oui. C'est bon.
Fier.
Ouais.
Qu'est-ce que c'est? C'est un petit appareil, ça. Bon, excusez-moi. Hein. Ok, droit. Fier. Ça vous embête pas que je roule une cigarette? Non, just one.
Non.
Non, je rigole. Ah, c'est bon.
Et votre prénom?
Bernard.
Bernard. OK. Merci, monsieur.
Merci à vous.
Bernard.
Je vous en prie. Bernard.
OK.
The ear of Bernard.
Yes.
Not the ear.
No.
It's Bernard.
I started photographing ears, because in the past I photographed frontal views of heads and side views of heads. And I thought it'd be just nice to do them as contacts. They're all different. Everyone is different, just like someone's face. It's more like a little hobby. Merci beaucoup. Qu'est-ce que c'est, votre nom, votre prénom?
Ludivina.
Ludvila?
Ludivina. I.
Oui.
N.
Everybody loves it if you ask them. Being photographed their right ear. They're right into it. Here I am in a public place, and I go and speak to a woman, and I say, may I photograph your ear? And then I go, and she says, yes, I guess so. And then I go up, and I'm looking at her ear, and then I start touching her ear, touching her hair, moving it back like this very gently. It's kind of a private thing, you know, like touching someone's ear and the hair all, and they don't even know me. It's a strange thing.
But Arnaud, you used to photograph models, and you always rearranging them. So I think it comes very naturally to you.
Oh yes, but I'm thinking that it's very a complete stranger. The photographer seems to have license to do whatever he wants to do. Like he could, you know, you can do that. But you can't do that to someone you don't know if you're not a photographer. You can't go up and start talking and doing that. Excuse me. Yeah, that's exactly. That's good. Perfection itself.
Oh, Arnaud. That's what you say to all of the people you photograph.
So what? Very still.
From a very early age, I knew that I would become an artist. I didn't feel that there were any other options open to me, and I wasn't interested in any other options.
When I first met Spring, she was doing sculptures sort of based on architectural ornament.
Work that I'm known for began in 1990, and it was called the Sacrificial Ornament, and all the ornaments were based on human and animal sacrifice. There's a theory that abounds that ornament really began with the actual remnants of sacrifice. So really all I do is I take out all the abstracted elements that have come down through time, and I place in the pagan origins back into the friezes, back into the entablatures. If you look up at a frieze, you will see the common dental molding as a series of small blocks in a row. I took them out and I replaced them with actual teeth. I like the idea of the dentals being a pair. For me, it's like they're having a conversation with one another. You remember when we bought these tongues?
Yeah, were they wagging?
No. What did he say when I bought them?
That 10 minutes earlier they were wagging.
That's right.
Yeah, but they were quite warm at the time we got them.
There was steam coming off them.
That's kind of like a, dare I say it?
What are you going to say, Arnaud? I'm here with bated breath.
I can't say it.
Arnaud.
Well, I think it looks like it's reaching for the G-spot.
Arnaud. Arnaud, man, look at, you say things and then you run away.
Yeah.
And I know that, so I know how to catch you.
I'm not sure that my appreciation and understanding of Spring's work has a lot to do with how I feel about Spring, in a way. I mean, I appreciated her as an artist, and then I think our relationship is different from that as two people. What do you think, Spring?
Well, I'll tell you this, Arnaud.
Yes.
If you were not a really, really interesting and notable artist, I'm afraid I would have not be interested in you.
Ooh.
I could not live with somebody that I didn't respect as an artist.
Yeah.
And I couldn't be with that person unless I felt that they really, really had something to say, or that they were really struggling hard to communicate something.
Yeah.
Like, I felt that I could really have discussions with you, which we've always had, and we struggle over and discuss ideas, and we shared what we knew with each other, and we just kept going.
That's true.
It's been really a significant partnership, Arnaud.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't imagine. The last 25 years have been so amazing and so interesting.
I can't imagine living with a bad artist. It's a bit hard to answer the question, because probably they're indivisible in a way. My feelings for Spring and my feelings for you as an artist. But there's a slight difference there too. I mean, I'm not with you because you're a great artist. No. There are other reasons.
I'm listening.
Yeah.
What are they?
Well, it's our personal relationship, isn't it?
Personal?
Yeah. I might be a terrific artist.
Yes.
But you might not be interested in me.
That's true.
I mean, there's some great artists around that you wouldn't have anything to do with. I know that. But so, it's something else, a different thing.
Uh-huh.
Don't you think so?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
You know what I like about you, Arnaud?
What?
Is that you're terrifically charming.
There we go.
I think it's quite interesting being with Arnaud, because we're both people who are into me. But what happens is, because we're both me people, we cancel each other out. So it's understood Arnaud has an ego. It's understood I have an ego. It's understood we live for our work. That's all clear. So we kind of drop that with each other.
It's a way of life for us, isn't it? Mm-hmm. That we both make art the main thing. It's been a great time, I'd say, for both of us. Wouldn't you say that? Yeah. I'm saying that for us both, because she's not saying anything. Is it a great time for you? sky. Wow.
Holy smokes, look at that. Look at that mist coming up from the river. Beautiful.
I think we've inspired each other. I can't imagine going along the way I've been going without spring. Oh, it's only a paper moon sailing over a cardboard sea, but it wouldn't be me.
Cardboard.
Cardboard what?
What is it? It's not really a paper. Okay, what is
A
it?
cardboard sky.
What did I say? See? Cardboard. Sky. All right, let's try. Hey, lamp. Oh no. I love this corona. I like the hand of God holding on to the corona. I think that's really fantastic. There's a huge amount of unknown facing us, and it seems, well, one thing can go well in the world, the next thing for me, then the next moment something really incredibly tragic can happen. So there's really no respite. No respite. I'm very interested in things that are highly ephemeral, that are extremely delicate, almost have no existence. And these elements could be traced back to this whole sense of the fragility of living and the precariousness of living. For me, my art is my very existence, and if I am not engaged in some way with a meaningful activity, I feel like I don't exist. It's that basic. I don't feel that I have a place in the world, and I don't feel like I've been carrying around the fact of, ever since I met Arnaud, that there's a 25-year difference. But it only became more extreme once he was diagnosed with cancer. From his prognosis, which is about 5 years ago, I had a time-limited situation with Arnaud. And it's such a different reality.
My father died when I was 84, and I had a very strange feeling becoming 85. In fact, the week before I became 85, I was quite concerned, and I had a fear of death somehow, and also a death wish. Somehow, when you go past your father's age, something dies. Some people get through it really well, some people don't. I felt reborn. I felt wonderful. I'm thinking I should value my friendships more, take more care of my family. I have 9 grandchildren, and I think I should give them more time, because I haven't probably given them enough. I've been busy working.
In 1999, my own father had died, James Hurwitz, and my mother gave me my father's ashes. And in 2005, I decided to revisit the ashes, look through them, sift through them, and see if I couldn't make a type of memorial to my father. I had never seen human ashes before, so I found it a very reverent thing to be able to look at my dad. I suppose I wanted to have some type of communication with my father. I worked for many years in natural history museums, and the way they would document an artifact was that they would put a ruler beside the object, the specimen or the artifact that they wanted to document, and it was a way to give them a scale reference. It was quite extraordinary in the case of my father to get actual bone shards that you could identify as bone shards. Often that's not the case. And actually, when I was making this work, I wasn't even terribly clear about whether or not it could actually be called art. Other people saw the work and they wanted their beloved family member or friend to be documented and so on. So the piece got larger than my own meditation with my father. That was the beginning of the Doi series, and Doi meaning to mourn.
I like it if my work can refer to photography in some way or the history of photography. I guess I was at the National Gallery and they had this Nadar book, and on the cover of the book is just a big photograph of this Pierrot as a photographer taking a picture. I have done hardly any self-portraits over the years, and I thought, what a wonderful idea to try and do that. Make me look about 55. You could do that? Sure. Too soon we get old, too late we get smart. So I saw this book of Nadar's, and it just gave me that idea that I could do a similar series and I'd have Pierrot the photographer. But then when I got into it and started working with the things, somehow it became more self-referential. So these are different little aspects, I guess, of my life. And well, I collect a lot of books and things, so I had Pierrot reading, and then Pierrot the collector, because I collect jugs. And this was showing off my jugs. And then Pierrot the musician, and here I am playing a harmonica, which I'm trying to learn to play right now.
I noticed that when Arnaud, when he's landed one of his ideas, he's quite unstoppable. He is buoyant. He's like just transformed. He keeps working and experimenting and inventing until he gets a perfect image.
Well, that's good. Let's do that one. They're called Lettres de Deuil, and they were, when someone died, the family would go to the stationery store, if one existed, probably in a big city it would, but they would buy a box of Lettres de Deuil or mourning envelopes, and they'd send them to their friends, acquaintances, informing them of the death of someone. I recognize the handwriting on it on the other side, and I'm upset because it tells me that someone that I know well or loved well has died. I have done more than one work showing Lettres de Deuil or letters of mourning, and when you stood back from them, and you realized that everyone had a story, had a life, or they're about someone's life. For me, somehow it's rather like a crossing out of that person, like no more, I'm 86 in a few weeks, and I thought it would be a good idea to do this. This is part of this piece, I think. For me, it's a record of myself, of my existence.
I proposed to Spring on our third date. I can't believe it.
We might ask Arnaud about date 2 because he remembers it vividly.
Before I could even get to her door, she was bounding out the door and over down the lane toward me. And she said, it's all off. It's all off. I don't think we should. Well, what did you say, Spring? Do you remember?
I said we shouldn't see each other anymore.
Shouldn't see each other anymore. I was quite keen on Spring at that moment. Well, those moments. At that moment in time, I was quite keen on Spring. And I thought, well, this is all going to ratchet. This is not the way I had planned things. And I thought she was kind of keen on me for some reason. And I thought, well, I have to think very, very quickly about what to do with this situation. So I realized she kind of had a prepared speech, and she wanted to get it over with comfortably and sort of be on her way. And I said, well, okay, let's have a goodbye kiss. And so she agreed. I mean, just nonchalantly, She agreed, and I put everything I had ever learned into that kiss. And that was the beginning of things, I guess. The real beginning of things, wasn't it?
It was goodbye, hello.
Yeah, it was goodbye, hello.
And then I really recall thinking that the charm, your charm, would sort of evaporate within a year, but it never has. You retain a certain charm and grace and thoughtfulness towards me that's never, ever departed. And that's, so I've always been waiting for the fall, but I've never experienced it.
So look around. Do, 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 do.
Okay.
What do you think of that? Isn't that great? That's pretty good, eh? It's pretty hard to beat. Well.
We have acquired over the last 40 years about 70 works by Arnaud. But this is the first time we've actually organized an exhibition of his work. I don't understand that, but it was about time.
Hi, Ruth.
What? You look nice.
Heather, how are you?
Stunning. I've been
seen the show? Yeah?
twice. Stunning.
You look good, dude.
Grandfather.
He's my great-grandson, and this is my grandson. Yeah.
I was asked by Margaret Priest to photograph her deceased mother. And as I was prying open the temporary black plastic urn box, I noticed that Trudy's ashes were just starting to hover in the air and kind of lick the top of the box. And it became very clear to me that Trudy did not want to be a two-dimensional photograph, but Trudy wanted to be airborne. For me, I don't disassociate myself with the fact that these are human remains and that they belong to a person, and that person was part of a family, and that their family is still alive, and they will be seeing the work that I make.
departed to the judgment. A mighty afternoon, great clouds, like ushers, leaning. Creation looking on. The flesh surrendered, cancelled. The bodiless begun. Two worlds like audiences disperse and leave the soul alone. I think I've lived a wonderful life. This year especially has been a lot of fun. I'd like to be remembered by my work very much. And I think I like the idea of leaving traces behind. I like the idea of traces, and you can do that with photography. I'm not afraid of death, and it's not a terrible disaster for me. I hope Spring does extremely well. I think it's going to take her a while to get over my death. It's far more difficult for her to handle than me, because she is left with the remnants. I'm just gone.
Arnaud died on November 17th at 11:30. I think that what happened with the work with the ashes is it allowed me to mourn Arnaud's death in advance. It allowed me to process it. It allowed me to study it, witness it. It just allowed me to be in the question, knowing that I would never have a solution.
So, Whatever you can do or dream you can, begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. Begin it now.
It's nice, the screen's right there.
I don't usually ask to stop the titles, but I know we're over time here. So if we could bring in our two directors on the Zoom, I'd be very grateful. We can certainly start by, we're lucky enough to have, there's Kitra. Hello, Kitra. Nice to see you. Thank you for your patience. And I think we have Katherine. Do we have Katherine as well?
Yes, can you see me?
Yes, hi, Katherine. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
Well, thank you both for such incredible films. We have a thinning audience here because we're slightly over time, so I'll get right to it. So, Kitra, we'll start with you. Can you tell us a little bit about the process of making this film with your dad?
Yeah, so at the beginning of the pandemic, as a daughter of someone who lives in long-term care, we quite immediately sprung into high gear trying to see how we could evacuate my father from the facility. And I got very involved in activism and in trying to support the workers and the other families, started organizing the other families. And just immediately there was a flood of death and tragedy all around us. And I started doing a lot of creative activism around advocating for workers and elders and people with disability and long-term care. And some of this work got noticed by a producer that I was close to at the National Film Board, and she asked if I wanted to do a film about my father's experience on the inside, where, of course, he was locked, he was in total isolation, wasn't allowed to leave his room for many months on end. And during that time, we decided to install security cameras in his room, both to kind of monitor his care. The cameras became an extension of caregiving and also became a tool for documenting his experience. So we had daily conversations where I would ask him, what does longing mean to you today? And I would record his responses, and that's basically how the film came together. The whole film was shot remotely. I lived between Montreal and Tucson, but during that time I was in Tucson, so the whole film I was filming just from an app on my phone.
Yeah, I wanted to let people know about that because it was quite extraordinary. I mean, you had no access, and so many of us were isolated in this time, and then to be able to make a film, and especially a film in long-term care, and especially a film about your dad, who's quadriplegic, was just obviously quite a feat.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because with all that distance, you brought an intimacy, I think, for all of us that I've rarely experienced in film. So it was really extraordinary, and your father's obviously but very poetic and, deeply thoughtful. So it was just such a lovely, lovely piece, and I felt we had to show it here to kind of talk about, what an art experience can bring to these conversations around long-term care, long-term illness, and death and dying. And this seemed to be a wonderful fit.
I
and
mean,
a beautiful
for me,
piece.
the making of the film was really my solace in all of the chaos and the tragedy that was happening during that time.
Yeah.
Because at his facility in Montreal, there have been over, I think, 75 deaths due to COVID in that one building alone. And so death was all around us, and just being able to go back into the family archive and stay connected through the making of this film was really, it was a really holy experience for me.
Yeah, Well, thank you so much. And I think speaking about the archive, Katherine, I wanted to turn to you because you've been sort of on a bit of a mission, I would say, for the last many years in terms of making films about artists and creating an archive where there is a big void. And in this particular film with Spring and Arnaud, you decided to do this in a very intimate way about where Arnaud is kind of in his last years. And I don't even know, was it last month, Spring, or when you started?
Well, it was really Katherine and Marcia and David from Site Media that came up with this plan, and then they came over to the studio and they actually said, this is what we want to do. We want to make a studio about your work, Spring, and a studio, and make and introduce Arnaud and just have them converge and separate. So it seemed like a very unusual idea, because normally an artist is sectioned off as one unique person and another unique person, but they wanted to create our story as a love story and of us two artists practicing. So they had to pull it together, and we were just kind of wondering how that would work, you know? But we gave it our fullest attention, and we tried very hard to accommodate Katherine and Marcia and David's vision, and we learned so much, and we were so ever grateful that they chose us, and it was a beautiful memorial thing too, because Arnaud was diagnosed with terminal cancer, and he didn't tell them. So
interesting.
So the filmmakers had no idea until right near the end that he was going to die. And Arnaud insisted on it being a secret, and he didn't want anyone to know about it. But it was difficult, but he accomplished what he wanted to accomplish as an artist in those last 4 years. So he played it to the fullest, and he pushed his work forward, and he never ever complained. He never ever lost his passion and his focus. But I'm also just very pleased to see the video. And thank you so much for sharing your father and his last days. It was such a brave film to make, and such a courageous act. And yet it brought you closer, and as you said, you felt a great deal of solace when you created that piece. So it's a piece about, generating like a memorial around him, but one that was really joyous and that you will have forever.
Katherine, are you still there? Do we have?
Yes,
Katherine?
can you hear
Oh,
me?
okay. Sorry, you didn't come on
Yeah.
before. So I was saying earlier about, your idea of sort of creating this archive of artists, and Spring has just explained to us now that, in fact, you didn't know Arnaud was dying. But it changed the film so much, and it must have happened, I guess, more so than in the editing room, because it really is, it's a love story, but it's also a story about endings. And I just wondered if you had some ideas and reflections on that.
Well, interesting enough, when I first thought of doing the film, and it's a co-direction with Marcia, Connolly, who's really responsible for a lot of the intimacy that comes across in the film. But from the very beginning, it was I was amazed that I would have access to an artist who was in his 80s. And what do you do when you're at that age? You're contemplating your life and your archive. And so I didn't know what to say to Arnaud, actually, because I was fascinated with end of life, but he was very much alive, and there was no sense of him being at the end of his life. However, the film was driven by a desire to record how does an artist make sense of their life as they reach when you know that the end is coming, even if it's not right there. And also that Spring was in her 60s, and we knew that she was making work about Arnaud's impending death, whether subconsciously or consciously, though I think it was very overtly conscious. Does that answer your question, Elle, or did that go off sideways?
No, not at all, not at all. But there's this, I mean, we have the companion piece here of Airborne, of Spring's piece, Airborne, where she's opening the boxes and the ashes are flying out. And I thought it was a super interesting moment when Spring talks about in the film, where you say, Spring, you know, how you pre-grieved Arnaud, and it's just, and you obviously chose to capture that in the film as well. So maybe between the two of you, there could be a little bit of a conversation about what that experience was like, about why you did that on film.
It starts, Spring, did you make Airborne in 206 or 208? But early on, when Airborne...
208, I think it was.
Yeah. And Marcia, the co-director, she lived in the same building as Spring.
Right.
And
yes.
I think they chatted about Marcia filming this art project, Airborne, and in the elevator. And so Marcia created Airborne for Spring long before the film was made. Wow. And so really, I think Airborne was when we began to understand that Spring was already thinking about Arnaud's death. And perhaps that gave us permission to also think about what death would mean to an artist as they approach their mid-80s and onwards.
Right.
Oh, I'm so captivated by your experience as filmmakers, both Marcia and yourself, Katherine, because I think that your task was quite daunting, to turn to singular artists and to weave them together as both independent artists and also a love story. And I thought, when you and Marcia proposed it at our studio, I just thought, sure, are you kidding me?
I know, we did a performance, Spring. We said, I remember standing up and I said, this is Spring, this is Arnaud, and here they cross.
Yes.
And in the beginning, in the crossover is love, and so you have Spring's work and Arnaud's work, and they have to be equal. It's a portrait of two equivalent artists, but the crossover is love, and the crossover is France, and the crossover is collecting objects, and love. Love's a big one.
Well, it's extraordinary for that, and I feel so blessed because Arnaud, of course, died in 2012, and I just kept thinking, I am the luckiest person in the world. I have this beautiful film of him and me and his work and my work and our lives, and as you said, you know, there was so many places that were key places in our lives and how they would converge. But I really felt that this was a wondrous way to retain someone's memory. And I think it really affected me, and it really pushed my own thoughts and work. And that's when I started to ask my mother if I could use my father's ashes in my work. And she agreed to it. And then, you know, Mary Pocock and so on. And all these people, the people who, their relatives and lovers and whatever, they all agreed to sign the document giving me permission to work with their ashes. So it's a kind of long story, but it's a story that is captured in the film, like me in my studio and the ashes of individuals and us doing Airborne and standing around and looking at the footage and just the richness of the collaborations. They were far beyond what you would call a cinematic director. They were sensitive and really well thought out and very, very, very unique and special. I thank them for that.
I would say that about both works. I mean, they're both very full works, which is what was so interesting to me. You know, they were about subjects, but they were about life, and they were about, you know, life passing. And we had a long discussion yesterday in the plenary about impermanence, and they were a lot about impermanence. And just knowing that these transitions happen. And I think we'll close, Kitra. I just had a quick question for you did you show this film to your dad? Was he able to see it?
Yeah, we were, I think his quote when he first watched the film was, "It's a ballet. It's so on point."
Wow.
How fabulous.
I think he feels, maybe not that the wholeness of himself is represented, because there's maybe a little bit less of his kind of theological self in there, although I see his rabbinic wholeness in the work. I think like I kind of consciously didn't reference God and faith directly within the film, but I think his humanity is very much expressed in there.
Yeah, no, very much.
Arnaud did not see his film finished.
But I feel Arnaud's presence everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So I just want to thank you guys for zooming in. I know you're all in different areas and locations around the world, so I'm very grateful that you made this time. We will have another screening tomorrow, but not with Kitra and Katherine, so I'm glad we got a chance to chat with you. But Spring and I will be here, and we're screening in another room tomorrow. So I'm hoping this engagement with film and death and dying and life passing and impermanence is bringing another dimension.
Yeah.
So thank you all for your beautiful, beautiful works. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks to the video guys.